Look, up on the screen, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman Lives? Where did this fight scene come from? Warning, spoilers ahead. With his long-awaited DC Comics blockbuster The Flash finally racing across the finish line into theaters across the country, director Andy Muschietti has given Superman fans one of the most shocking surprises ever. At least it would have been shocking if he hadn't spoiled it weeks ahead of the film's release. Yes, we're talking about that jaw-dropping, head-scratching cameo appearance from none other than Nicolas Cage in the role of the Man of Steel. Much hay was made of his inclusion in the film after Muschietti leaked the news. While both the scene and the uproarious reaction from fans may have been confusing for casual observers, it's actually a reference to an almost mythological DC Comics project that was shelved many years ago. Having existed only through vague recollections and test footage, fans familiar with the project have likely been in the clouds themselves, imagining what it might look like when they finally get a glimpse at the Superman film that might have been. Then again, now that they've actually had a chance to see the scene for themselves in the context of the uneven multiverse story of The Flash, they may now be questioning if it's worth all the hay in Smallville. For those experiencing the legend of Nicolas Cage's Superman for the first time in The Flash, we'll briefly recap its long, confusing history and development hell. The story goes that hot off the success of his indie film Clerks, Kevin Smith was contacted by Warner Brothers to write a new Superman film within the universe of Tim Burton's Batman series. Later in the process, Burton himself would even be attached to direct, under the prospective title Superman Lives. According to Smith, producer John Peters felt that Superman, as a character, was too queer-coded, which is a nice way of saying that he kept referring to the character with homophobic slurs in his production notes. Because of this bigoted anxiety, Peters gave Smith 3 non-negotiable parameters for his story.
1, I don't want to see him in that suit. 2, I don't want to see him fly. And 3, he's got to fight a giant spider in the 3rd act.
Unfortunately, these were far from the last bizarre notes Smith or Burton would hear during production, most of which concern the addition of scenes and characters that were just there to sell merchandise. Either because of genuine quality concerns, a rapidly inflating budget, or a lack of confidence following the abysmal response to 1997's Batman and Robin, Superman Lives was shelved for good in 1998, doomed to tease fans for 25 years. But now that we have some part of this promise finally fulfilled, was it really worth all the hype? Well, no! The problem with the lightning-fast Superman Lives sequence is the same problem that follows the rest of the forced cameos in The Flash. The scene plays out with Cage's Superman fighting off a giant spider, and once he defeats the spider, he just looks directly at the screen. The idea seems to be that these cameo worlds will be destroyed if the Flash doesn't undo his time travel actions, but it's introduced so last minute that it never had as much weight as it should have. Even ignoring the fact that the CGI model for Cage is far from perfect, the scene itself is merely slapped on the outside of the story with no setup, payoff, or impact. If you're looking for a meaningful glimpse at Tim Burton and Kevin Smith's scrapped Superman project, you're likely going to be disappointed. However, for those of us that go to these multiverse films to feast on as many Easter eggs as we possibly can, Nicolas Cage's uncanny turn to Superman makes The Flash every bit the masterpiece it was said to be.